Have you ever made a mistake so small that it changed your entire night? I have, and it happened in an airport. It was February. I'd been traveling for work for almost 3 weeks straight, Dallas, then Phoenix, then up to Seattle, and now I was finally headed home to Charlotte. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in any single stretch for the past 10 days. My eyes felt like sandpaper. My thinking was foggy. I was running entirely on bad airport coffee and the promise of my own bed. Atlanta Hartsfield. If you've ever connected through that airport, you already know it's basically its own city. 7 concourses, hundreds of gates, tens of thousands of people moving in every direction at all hours. Even on a good day, with a rested brain, it can scramble you. That night, it scrambled me completely. My connection was tight, only 40 minutes. I came off the jetway already moving fast, pulling my carry-on, checking my phone for the gate number. B14. Okay. I was in Concourse B already. I found the train, rode at one stop and speed walked to B14. The gate board said Charlotte. Boarding was already in progress. I got in line, scanned my boarding pass and walked down the jetway without a second thought. I found a middle seat, shoved my bag in the overhead and sat down. I put my headphones in before the doors even closed. I was asleep before we pushed back from the gate. I woke up to the captain's voice announcing our initial descent. I pulled my headphones out, stretched my neck, and looked out the window at the city lights below. Something felt off immediately, but I couldn't place it. Cities at night all look similar, grids of orange and white light. I told myself I was just disoriented from sleep. We landed. The wheels hit the runway hard. I waited groggy for the seatbelt sign to ding off, and then I reached up for my bag and filed out with everyone else. The jetway, the gate, and then I stopped walking. The airport around me was wrong. This was supposed to be Charlotte Douglas International, and nothing about what I was looking at matched any memory I had of that airport. The signage was different. The layout was different. The concourse stretched in a direction that didn't make sense to me. I stood there for a solid 10 seconds just trying to reorient myself. Maybe a different terminal. Maybe construction had changed things. I walked to the nearest screen and looked up at the arrivals board. Nashville International Airport. I read it 3 times. Nashville. I was in Nashville, Tennessee, not Charlotte, North Carolina, not home. I'd boarded the wrong plane. I stood there in the middle of that concourse with people flowing around me on both sides, and I felt something I can only describe as a kind of freefall. Like the floor dropped an inch beneath me. The exhaustion, the disorientation, the dawning horror of what I had actually done. It all hit at once. I called my wife. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I texted her, I'm in Nashville, don't panic, I messed up. I'm figuring it out. Then I walked to the nearest airline desk to figure out what was possible. And that's where the story stops being about a simple mistake. The agent at the desk was helpful, professional, doing everything right. She pulled up my original boarding pass, confirmed the error on my end, started looking for the next available flight to Charlotte. While she was typing, I glanced around the gate area out of habit. Tired habit. The kind of look you do when you've spent weeks in airports and you're always half scanning your environment without meaning to. There was a man sitting directly across from the desk. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't reading anything. He wasn't doing what people in airports do. He was just sitting there completely still, watching me. Not glancing. Not the casual eye contact you make with strangers. Watching, with a focus that was patient and deliberate. I looked away, told myself it was nothing. The agent gave me options. Next flight to Charlotte was at 6 in the morning, almost 7 hours away. She could get me on standby for an earlier one if there were cancellations, but she couldn't promise anything. I thanked her, took the confirmation, and turned to find somewhere to sit and wait out the night. The man was gone. I found a row of seats near my gate, sat down and plugged my phone in to charge. I texted my wife again with the update. She replied finally, worried, then relieved, then gently laughing at me in the way she does when something is awful but also kind of funny. I almost felt normal again. I must have dozed off sitting upright. I don't know for how long. When I came back, the concourse had thinned out significantly. Late night in a smaller airport, most of the shops were closed, most of the gates were dark. Maybe 30 or 40 people visible in the whole stretch of terminal. My bag was unzipped. I always zip my bag, always. It's habit from years of traveling. The main compartment, the front pocket, both zipped. The main compartment was open. Not wide open, just unzipped, the zipper head sitting 6 inches from where it should have been. I went through everything. My laptop was there. My wallet was in my jacket, which it always is. Nothing obvious was missing. My travel documents were in the front pocket, still zipped. I couldn't find anything gone. But someone had been in that bag while I slept. In a public airport with cameras and people in security, someone had crouched next to me and gone through my belongings while I was unconscious in a chair. I didn't sleep again after that. I sat with my bag on my lap, my back against the wall, watching that terminal for the next 5 hours until my gate opened. I never saw the man again. I never figured out what, if anything, was taken. When I got home to Charlotte, I went through every pocket, every compartment, every sleeve. Everything seemed to be there. 2 weeks later, there were 3 charges on a credit card I didn't know had been compromised. A card that lives in a hidden slot in the back panel of that bag. A slot I never use and never check because I forget it's there. Whoever went through my bag knew that slot existed. They knew exactly where to look. Most people think the scariest thing about flying is the plane going down. But what happened to me never left the ground. I've flown probably 40 times in my life. Layovers, red-eyes, early morning departures where you're half asleep and running on bad coffee. You get used to airports, the noise, the crowds. That's what I kept telling myself the night I got stranded at Denver International. It was February, 2 years ago. I was flying back home to Columbus after visiting my sister in Savannah. My connecting flight got delayed first by an hour, then 2, then they finally announced it was canceled altogether due to weather up north. The gate agent handed me a hotel voucher, but by the time I got through the rebooking line, every shuttle to every nearby hotel was completely full. The airline said they'd get me on the first flight out at 6 in the morning. So I was stuck. The main terminal still had some people scattered around, other stranded passengers, a few food court workers finishing their shifts. I found a row of seats near gate D14, plugged in my phone, and figured I'd just ride it out. It was around 11:30 at night. By 1 a.m., the terminal had emptied out to almost nothing. That's something people don't think about. Airports at night feel completely different. The lights stay on, the announcements still play every so often, but the energy just drains out of the place. I wasn't scared, not then. I was just bored and tired and a little annoyed. Around 1:30, I got up to find a vending machine. I'd eaten at the food court earlier but wanted something to snack on. I walked down the terminal corridor, passing closed gate after closed gate, until I found a little alcove with vending machines and a single men's restroom. Got a bag of chips, used the bathroom, headed back. When I came out of that alcove, there was a man standing about 30 feet away in the middle of the corridor. He wasn't walking. He wasn't on his phone. He was just standing there facing my direction, completely still. Middle-aged, I'd say. Dark jacket, no luggage, no bag of any kind. Just standing there in an empty airport corridor at 1:30 in the morning. I figured he was disoriented. Maybe another stranded passenger who'd wandered away from the gate areas. I nodded at him as I walked past. He didn't respond, didn't move. His eyes tracked me, but his body didn't shift at all. I kept walking. Back at my gate, I sat down and told myself I was being paranoid. Airports attract all kinds of people. He probably had a reason to be there that I just couldn't see. But 20 minutes later, I looked up from my phone and he was at the far end of the gate seating area. Still standing, still not doing anything. I looked around. There was one other person visible from where I was sitting, a woman 2 gates down, asleep across a row of seats, headphones in. I couldn't see any airport staff from where I sat. I picked up my bag, walked to the gate counter, and used the desk phone to call for airport security. The recording told me to press 1 for ground transportation and 2 for terminal assistance. I pressed 2 and got put on hold. I hung up. I looked back. He had moved closer, maybe just 20 feet further into the gate area, but he had moved, and he was still just standing there, looking in my direction. I walked directly to the woman who was sleeping, and I woke her up. She was startled at first, pulled her headphones out, looked at me like I was the problem. I quietly told her there was a man who'd been standing and staring for the better part of an hour, and I didn't feel right about it, and I just didn't want to be alone right now. Something in my voice must have convinced her because she looked over my shoulder, and I watched her expression shift. She said, "Yeah, that's not normal." We walked together to the main security checkpoint area, which was closed for the night but had a staffed booth just past it. I explained what was happening. The TSA officer called it in on his radio. 2 airport police officers showed up within 5 minutes. We took them back toward the gate. The man was gone. They did a sweep of the surrounding gates and the restroom alcove. Nothing. One of the officers came back to me and asked if I could describe the man more specifically: height, build, age, anything distinctive. I told them everything I remembered. He wrote it down, and then he said something that I still think about. He said they'd had a report earlier that evening of a man, matching a similar description, who'd been removed from baggage claim for approaching multiple persons and asking them if they were traveling alone. He'd been escorted out of the building. Not arrested, just escorted out. He had come back in. The officers let me and the woman sit in a small staff area near the security booth for the rest of the night. Plastic chairs and fluorescent lights, but I didn't care. Around 5:30, they walked us both back to our gates. I never saw the man again. I don't know if they found him that night or not. The officer who took my information gave me a card and said they'd follow up, but nobody ever called. I fly through Denver pretty regularly for work now. Every single time, no matter how tired I am, no matter how many people are around me, I don't sleep in the terminal. I'm not someone who gets rattled easily. I've flown probably 40, 50 times in my life. Airports don't intimidate me. Crowds don't bother me. I know how to move through a terminal, head down, earbuds in, get to your gate, wait. Simple routine. But there's something about being alone in an airport at 2 in the morning that strips all that confidence right off you. It was a layover in Chicago, O'Hare International. If you've ever been through that airport, you know it's massive, one of the busiest in the world during the day. But at 2:30 in the morning, most of the terminals go quiet. Shops are shuttered. Cleaning crews are sparse. The people who are there, the stragglers, the overnight travelers, they kind of disappear into corners and charging stations and dark restaurant booths with their eyes closed. I had a 5-hour layover. My connecting flight to Portland wasn't until 6:15. I'd done the math a dozen times. Sleep wasn't happening. I'd had too much coffee. My back was stiff from the first flight, and the seats at my gate had those armrests designed specifically to stop you from lying down. So I figured I'd walk, clear my head, maybe find a vending machine that still worked. That's when I noticed the woman. She was sitting across from me at the gate when I first sat down, maybe 60 feet away, older, gray hair pulled back tight, wearing a long wool coat that seemed completely wrong for Chicago in July. I didn't think much of it. People wear strange things in airports. Temperature regulation, comfort, whatever. I glanced at her, looked away, got on my phone. When I came back from my walk about 20 minutes later, she was in a different seat. Closer, still facing my direction. I told myself she just moved for a better charging outlet. There were outlets every few feet along the wall. Totally reasonable. I sat back down, put one earbud in, kept my phone out. Around 3 in the morning, I got up to use the restroom. When I came back, she was gone. I actually felt a small, stupid wave of relief. Then my phone buzzed. Notification from the airline app. A gate change. My flight had moved to Concourse F, that was across the airport, a train ride and a long walk. I grabbed my bag, checked the time, figured I had plenty of cushion, and started moving. The interterminal train was empty except for me and a maintenance worker who got off after one stop. By the time I reached Concourse F, the corridor was long and dim, half the overhead lights on some kind of low-power night mode. My footsteps echoed. The gate I needed, F14, was at the far end. I found it, sat down, pulled out my phone to confirm the new gate. That's when I realized the notification I'd gotten wasn't from the airline app. It was from a number I didn't recognize, no contacts saved, just a raw 10-digit number. The message said, Gate F14, 315. It was 311. I stared at that message for a long time. I told myself it was a mistake, a misdirected text, some kind of automated system glitch, spam. I almost convinced myself. Then I looked up. The woman in the wool coat was sitting at the end of the row. She hadn't been there when I sat down. I don't know how she got there without me hearing her. I don't know how she'd known to come to this concourse. I don't know why she was watching me with that completely flat, unreadable expression, like I was something she was waiting to collect. I stood up immediately, trying to look calm because my brain was telling me I was probably overreacting, probably being paranoid, probably about to feel embarrassed about this later. I walked to the gate desk. No agent on duty, they don't staff the desk that far in advance, especially not overnight. The desk was dark. The jetway door was locked. I pulled up the airline's website directly and searched my flight number. The gate listed was B22, not F14. The notification, wherever it had actually come from, had sent me to the wrong concourse entirely. There was no gate change. There never had been. I turned around. She was standing now. I didn't wait. I just moved. Fast walked toward the corridor I'd come from, back toward the train station, not running because running felt like it would make something real that I was still hoping wasn't. I got to the train platform and hit the button. The board said 4 minutes. I stood with my back against the wall, watching the corridor. She appeared at the far end about 30 seconds later, walking, unhurried, like she knew exactly where I was going and wasn't worried about catching up. The train took 3 minutes and 47 seconds. I counted. She reached the platform just as the doors were opening. I stepped on. She stopped at the edge of the platform, didn't board, just watched the doors close. I rode back to Concourse B shaking, found the gate, found a cluster of other travelers, a staff desk, bright lights. I sat in the most visible seat I could find and didn't move for 2 hours. I reported it to airport security. They took my information, asked me to describe her, told me they'd look into it. I don't know if they ever found her. No one followed up. What I keep coming back to, what I haven't been able to shake, is the text, because I never figured out how someone knew to send me to that concourse, to that specific gate, at that specific time. My flight information wasn't public. My number wasn't posted anywhere. And whoever sent that message had known, somehow, that I was alone, that I would follow a gate change notification without questioning it, that I'd walk to the far end of a dark, empty concourse at 3 in the morning without a second thought. I fly a lot less now, and when I do fly, I don't move from my gate for anything. Not for a notification, not for a message, not for anything I didn't know about before I sat down. Because whatever that night was, whoever that woman was, I know one thing for certain. I was being led somewhere. And I don't want to find out what would have happened if I'd stayed. These are 3 airport horror stories. If any of these made you grip your seat a little tighter, hit that like button right now. And if you're new here, subscribe and press the bell icon if you do not want to miss what's coming next. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these 3 hit you the hardest. I read every single one. Until next time, stay safe out there.